Hey, welcome back to the About the Labor podcast here at VikingsTerritory.com. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald. And today, we've got a few Vikings updates for you. If you haven't already checked the Pioneer Press, Chris Thomason reported that Tom Compton is going to be a Minnesota Viking. That's an offensive guard, offensive tackle guy, something like that. He's from Rosemont, Minnesota. He played his college football at South Dakota, so we'll talk a little bit about him. He's got those Minnesota ties and the South Dakota ties for Drew, so we're both a fan of that one. Absolutely. Kai Forbath is returning once again, kicker for the Vikings. Has been very good since coming to Minnesota, and as you guys all know, depending on how long you've been listening to the show for, I am not the biggest fan of Kai Forbath, and I never really have been, but he has proven time and time again that he's actually a pretty solid kicker in the NFL, and he's coming back to the Vikings for next season. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. And, we'll finish up with a little discussion about the Vikings playing the Philadelphia Eagles Week 1. We'll get that rematch of the NFC Championship game immediately on the schedule for 2018. And then we'll finish up with questions as we always do. So that's the game plan for the show today. Thanks for tuning in as always, and I'm just going to make this clear right now since it's been me who has been inconsistent. Shows will continue to be on Mondays and Fridays. We will be recording those on Sundays and Thursdays, and I try to get those up as quickly as possible. So if you're a subscriber to the show, whether that's on iTunes, CastBox, Google Play, Stitcher, Podbean, YouTube, whatever it is, make sure you're hitting that upvote button for us. That helps a lot. Make sure you're leaving comments if you have any questions, and we'll try to get to those as well. That's kind of the game plan here. So let's just jump right into it. We'll start with Tom Compton since that was the first on the agenda. What do you think of Tom Compton? I mean, this is kind of he's an interesting player here because he has done so much. I was looking at his ProFootballReference.com bio. He has played left guard, he has played right guard, he has played right tackle. According to the 2015 season, he played fullback and middle linebacker for a couple snaps.
Wow.
This is a guy who played 44 games in Washington, 16 in Atlanta, 11 in Chicago, and in total 16 starts, 11 of those coming in Washington. So he's most familiar or most recognized from his time with the Washington Redskins. So any thoughts immediately from this signing for the Vikings?
Yeah, I think it's just one of those things where the Vikings need to find offensive line depth. I think that was pretty clear, right. Especially with the concerns with Joe Berger, whether he's coming back or whether he's going to retire, go to Detroit, I think was possibly in the running for his services as well. But I think it's clear that the Vikings need to find some depth in the offensive line, and they do, if Berger does retire, need to find a starter as well. But I think Compton's a guy that can play multiple positions, and the Spielman, the coaching staff, Tony Sperano, Mike Zimmer, they've all preached that they want guys that can play multiple positions. And it sounds like Compton can play multiple positions on both sides of the ball. I mean, he's playing linebacker, he's playing running back, he's playing all these different positions. So that's just what you get. South Dakota, man. These South Dakota guys, that's just what you get.
Stop. I mean, we could say the same thing about Anthony Barr, too. You know, Anthony Barr coming from UCLA.
Yeah,
he was a running back, a defensive end, a linebacker, whatever. I mean, once you get out on the football field, does it really matter? That's kind of what it comes down to here. But for Tom Compton specifically, this is a nice ad for the Vikings, in my opinion. Like Drew said, this is a guy that comes over here with a lot to prove still, but he's kind of got that. He has the versatility that Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman have been trying to fight for over the last couple of seasons. That's adding interior line depth that can play more than one position, right? That's kind of the general goal. We saw this happen with Pat Elflein last year, for example, where everyone knew he was coming in to probably play center because, I guess I shouldn't say that. People kind of figured that he was going to play guard because Berger had been playing center.
Right.
But then you basically try to find the best combination. And if you can get, three guys for sure, but ultimately 4, 5, 6 guys that can play multiple positions on the offensive line, that's best of both worlds. I mean, it doesn't necessarily every player wants to be a starter. We all know that. There's no player in the world who doesn't want to start. There's no human in the world that doesn't want to start for an NFL team.
Right.
But the fact of the matter is some guys are better than others, and some opinions are better than others. Some coaches are better than others. Some front offices are better than others. And the Vikings, from what I can see, are doing a hell of a job putting their guys in position to succeed. And so you kind of get this impression that the Vikings are, able to sort of spread out their offensive linemen and sort of create a situation where everyone can succeed. Mm-hmm. And Compton comes into a very good situation here.
Yeah, I mean, it's all these guys that they brought in can play different positions. Reef can play both sides of the tackle position. Remmers is playing guard now and has played tackle in the past. Elflein came in as a guard and turned into a center. Berger can play both. I mean, you're seeing with all these different draft picks that they've had, and now you get in Compton, who's played guard, who's played tackle. Then you can, I think they've showed interest now in Billy Price, another Ohio State interior offensive lineman who can play center and guard. I think that's what they preach. They want to find guys that can play all over the place, and then you find continuity with different combinations. You find out, like last year, we didn't expect Elflein to be a starting center. We kind of thought he would slide in that guard. Comes in, and it looks like he just has more continuity with the quarterbacks and the snap situation, but also he did really well as a screen guy, getting out in space immediately after snapping the football. That's something Elflein could do, and probably a little bit better than Berger. I just found that as a working combination, and they went with it. And I think that's what they're doing here with Compton. They're going to find another guy that can move around, and he can play guard, he can play tackle, and if at the very least as a depth guy that he could fill in at any different of those, probably any left guard, left tackle, right guard, right tackle, any of those four spots, he can probably fill in, and you can feel confident about the Vikings offense, maintaining its output.
Yeah, so kind of going off what you just said there, I feel like the easy question here is after this Compton signing, the next question is, okay, how do the Vikings continue to bolster this offensive line? And to me, I think they've got to be done at this point. I know that fans, I read on Twitter all the time.
You mean in free agency?
Yeah, in free agency. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I've seen fans kind of asking me questions on Twitter. They ask Drew questions on Twitter. They ask, hell, you guys ask each other questions on Twitter, right? That's
Twitter.
That's Twitter. But so I kind of think that part of the fun of all this is that the Vikings have more cap room, so they have that sort of that empty threat, right? Teams have to recognize the fact that the Vikings have all this cap room, and they can look at the Vikings and say, okay, if I want this guy, I don't remember how many guys are still out there. Eric Reid from the 49ers, the safety. That's one name.
Bring him up. Yep.
That's one name that I have brought up myself just by looking at kind of what the Vikings have at safety next to Harrison Smith. I mean, both of us have expressed being proponents of guys like J-Ron Curtis, Anthony Harris, and even Andrew Sandeo after last year. But Eric Reid will be out there as well. So the easy question here is, are the Vikings going to continue to make moves in free agency? And my honest answer is I don't think so. I don't see any reason for the Vikings to continue to do that, being that they have so many draft picks and they can move around with that flexibility at number 30. Remember, keeping in mind how much the Vikings seem to like that fifth-year option in the first round.
Right.
Well, how important is that right now? I don't know. It's hard to say at this point. So I would say that the Vikings are probably done in free agency. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I'm thinking that they probably are too. Definitely no more, nothing like splashy, I guess. Right. I mean, I would say Compton's a splashy signing, but it's definitely a good piece to have. And I think now the next step is going to be adding offensive linemen in the draft. There's going to be a bunch of names that slide down. That usually happens with guys.
Well, there's Billy Price is the first one that everyone loves to talk about. Probably,
he might slide down even farther than that 30th pick with his injury concerns now. So, I mean, there's one. I mean, Brian Ramczyk last year, I thought he was picked way later than he should have been. I think any of you that were listening to the show a year ago know how I felt about Ryan Ramczyk.
You made your love for him pretty obvious.
There's always offensive linemen that fall farther than they should. Pat Elflein's an example. The Vikings will be able to get one or two really good starting quality players, I think, in this draft with their top two picks, both in the first and second round. And who knows, maybe Spielman will trade back into the first round again. Maybe he'll trade out of it. But like you said, he does enjoy having that fifth year option. So it'll be interesting to see. But I think they definitely go offensive lineman pretty early in the draft.
One last note on on Tom Compton from Chris Thomason here. He quoted Tom Compton being asked about Kirk Cousins and their relationship, and the quote says, "Extremely close with Kirk, good friend of mine. We got to play together for 4 years in Washington, and I soon as I heard the news that I was coming here, deep down I hoped we would be able to reunite once again." So there's a connection there between Mr. Cousins and Mr. Compton. So good news on that front. From there, let's jump into a little bit of Kai Forbath talk. As anyone, special teams is not my favorite thing to talk about in the world, but it is an important phase of the game nonetheless. Kai Forbath returning, you get a kicker that was very consistent for the Vikings last season. He came over to Minnesota with a ton of question marks. The time when he was with the New Orleans Saints did not go swimmingly, let's say. He's had some bumps in the road throughout his career, but only good things in Minnesota. I mean, he missed a couple of stupid extra points.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you can nitpick and say I think his extra point percentage was below league average. But how big did he come up in that Saints-Vikings playoff game?
Did.
I think he made a couple of really big kicks towards the end of that second half that I personally didn't expect him to make, and that's probably just because of the history of the team.
I was just going to say, is the reason why we wouldn't expect Forbath to make those kicks, is it because of Gary Anderson and because of Blair Walsh, or is it because of
more
Kai
of
Forbath?
It's probably more of the former, because it's just it's the history of the team, the curse. It's there. We are
cursed.
We are
cursed.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the simplest way to put it, the most blunt way to put it. But I mean, he performed a lot better than I actually expected him to. And that's even with, what I thought he did pretty well towards the end of 2016 when he was brought in. So yeah, I have no problem with re-signing Kai Forbath. He seems to be, I don't know if this is actually a term that's been used before, but a franchise kicker, a guy that you can rely on as your kicker for the future, the foreseeable future, right? Because he's 30 years old, but that's pretty young for kicker years. Adam Vinatieri is like 45 and he's still kicking.
So it's funny that you say that. We never use the term franchise kicker, which is hilarious because who the hell would ever say that? But it's worth noting that the franchise tag has been placed on kickers and punters before, and that's kind of like a savvy front office move, in my opinion, where like you're not saying this is the face of our franchise. Although I will say that Oakland did try really, really hard to make Sebastian Janikowski.
Yeah, they did. They did. I would argue they successfully did make Sebastian Janikowski the face of their franchise for a little bit there.
He's the sea bass, right?
He's the sea bass. For a while, though, the Raiders were, when they were going through those late 2000s when they would win like 4 games a year.
Yeah.
I would argue Janikowski and Shane Leckler combined were the faces of the franchise.
Too.
Yeah,
they were like all pro. That was like all pro special teams university. Like just
they had the best special teams in the league, and they were the worst team.
They did. So I guess to round out this Kai Forbath talk, and then we'll jump into this matchup coming next season, which is still really, really far away, and I don't know why we're even talking about it now. But before we. Sorry. Let's just kind of round it out. Final thoughts on Kai Forbath coming back, yay or nay on this return, or are you someone that I'm going to put this out there right now. I don't believe in drafting kickers or punters, but
I agree.
There are some people out there that do. So are you pumped about this signing, or are you, I guess, lackadaisical about it? I suppose.
Well, I like the move. I like keeping Kai Forbath. Like I said, franchise kicker with air quotes. But there's going to be people that don't like this because of, a feeling they have that they're scared when he goes and kicks. And I just have this feeling like you're going to feel that way about any kicker that lines up.
I like that. I like that.
It's going to feel. You're going to have that feeling with anybody
until we get that big game-winning kick, like a la Vinatieri in the Super Bowls with New England.
The last time I didn't have that feeling, honestly, was probably Blair Walsh's rookie season, and that was because he was an all-pro kicker. Straight up, and he dwindled since then. And then we had the missed kick, and then we all know the history of that. So
I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I feel like this is kind of like the narrative with Vikings fans and Vikings kickers. It's like you start off where like, all right, blank slate. He's not Gary Anderson. He's not Blair Walsh. He's not Kai Forbath. He's not whoever the hell. Insert Morton Anderson. Insert name of kicker here. This new guy is not that guy. Mm-hmm. He's going to be the one to figure it out. And so then you start off, you're like, okay, let's give him some time. And then you kind of watch him rise a little bit, like especially with Blair Walsh. Blair Walsh's rookie season, I will defend Blair Walsh's rookie season to anyone. One of the best.
And Matt Khalil, actually.
And in 2012, yeah. So, I mean, you can make a very strong argument that Blair Walsh's rookie season was as good of a kicking season as we have ever seen. A top 5, top 10 kicking.
I think he had 12 straight 50-plus yarders in a row or something like that.
And he was 10. I think he was 10 for 10 from 50-plus or something like that as a rookie, which is a tied for the record or something like an NFL record. So then you get to that part where you're like, okay, this guy can really freaking kick. Like he can really do this. We might be breaking the curse. And then so you're all the way up to here and you're jacked about it. And then comes the moment. Right? It comes like the moment where it's like, oh, he's for sure got this. Like there's no way he's gonna miss it. He's no way. and then it goes from 27 yards or 37 yards or whatever stupid a distance it is, and he misses wide left or he misses wide right or he pulls it or the snap doesn't go through or Jeff Locke can't hold the damn ball or something happens, and then everyone just goes from like, it's like a 0 to 60 thing, but it's the reverse. Yeah. It's like a 60 to 0.
Right.
And it's like, that's the revolving curse of the Minnesota Vikings. So it's like, I feel like it's ingrained in everyone's head at this point where we just have this expectation that kickers are going to fail. Now, from what I have seen from Kai Forbath, he's got kind of the mellow personality. He dresses like a gangster from the 60s. You know,
he does.
I mean, he seems like an all-around
He's got
good
the
dude.
name of a gangster from the 60s, too.
Kai Forbath. Cobra Kai, as they like to say. So, I mean, I believe in Kai Forbath. I believe in what he's doing. But the thing is with kickers is that, like, your reputation is on every single kick, and that's like that to me is what sucks. That's where fans need to improve. I think from a fan perspective, I think that fans need to look at the body of work before freaking the you know what word I want to use here, freaking out every single time a kick is missed. Like an extra point is worth 1 point, and sometimes that 1 point comes back to bite you. And as Mike Zimmer loves to say, we need to have those kicks, but they're going to miss kicks sometimes. They're not robots.
No such thing as a perfect kicker.
They're human beings.
They don't exist. So
basically,
I mean, every fan base in the NFL, I would imagine, except maybe like Baltimore and a few others, are going to be very nitpicky about their kickers. It's just the way it is.
You've got two kickers out there right now who are basically untouchable in my opinion. That's Detroit's Matt Prater and Baltimore's Justin Tucker. And then, I mean, I would make the case for Adam Vinatieri still. Honestly, I don't even know if he's still in the league. I haven't heard of Adam Vinatieri.
Yeah, he's coming back. One more season.
Is he coming back?
He's 45 or 46 years old.
So you've got three kickers right there who are basically untouchable, and everyone else is just nowhere to be found. Like it's like those three guys up here, 50 feet of crap, as they would say in that Billy Bean move, Moneyball, and then you've got like the other kickers, and then you've got some guys who just probably shouldn't even be in the league at all. But overall, I'm happy with Kai Forbath coming back. I believe he was consistent. He has earned the right to come back again, and hopefully, Vikings fans can trust him a little bit more. So from there, let's jump into this matchup week 1 next season. Vikings are playing against the Philadelphia Eagles. Of course, this is a rematch of the NFC Championship game. What's the first thing that everyone wants to talk about? The Eagles blew out the Vikings. We know. Yeah. Yes, they did. But here's the point of why the NFL probably wants to do this. Again, I don't know why they would do this, but the reason why is to give the fans what they want. We want the rematch. And guess what, guys? You can't just ask for a playoff rematch to settle the score in the postseason. That's not how it works. What you can ask for is for the NFL to give you the opportunity to rewatch something that made you feel great or made you feel miserable. And those are the two feelings I got from the Philadelphia Eagles fans and from Vikings fans. So that's what you're going to get week 1. It's coming. And Howie Roseman has been doing a phenomenal job, like continuing to build up that Philadelphia Eagles team. And obviously Rick Spielman, Rob Brzezinski, the Wilfs, Mike Zimmer, etc. have been doing a phenomenal job this offseason, continuing to build up the Vikings. So it's going to end up being a matchup between two teams that are, similar, I suppose. A lot of the same players. You're going to get Carson Wentz this time, of course. That's going to be a different thing.
Yep.
But you're also going to get Kirk Cousins this time. So I guess what are your immediate thoughts about this matchup for the Vikings next season?
I think it could be the most important game of the season, overall. I mean, at the time, obviously it's going to be, but when you look back at the season, depending on how things shake out, I think setting the tone the right way week 1 against the Philly team that dominated you in the NFC Championship is going to be big. Because if you go out there and lay another egg, or you let Philly walk all over you again, that just kind of sets the expectation right away that we're not as good as this team.
Right.
We are going to be, when it's all said and done, at the very least, or at the very best, we're going to be behind them. So I think at the very least you have to compete in that game, make it interesting. Just do not let Philly walk all over you because, they are they're defending Super Bowl champions for a reason. So I think it's very important to stay competitive in that game for 4 quarters. And I think that's, and again, I like you said, that's what the fans want is a rematch of that game because it becomes a very interesting storyline. You get a team that upgraded their quarterback. You get a team that, with the Vikings, that upgraded that defensive line, but then you also have the Eagles who have upgraded their defense. It's going to be 2 of the best teams in the NFL right there. I believe the Vikings are actually the top Super Bowl odds right now at Vegas, which is exactly
really
But yeah, I think the Cousins edition brought them to like 8-1.
Well, thank you for
Philly's 9-1. So
thank you in advance, Las Vegas, for jinxing us however many months before the season even started. So thank you for that. But here's my thinking here is that I like what you said about it being one of the most important games of the season, because a lot of people are going to say, it's just 1 week, right? Like, it's just the first week of the season. They can rebound. Yes, you're right, guys, but you're being kind of like, you're pretending to act like morale doesn't matter.
The whole season, like, if things shake out the right way and the Vikings are contending and, dominating the league again, and Philly probably will be too, that game will be the measuring stick for how the Vikings stack up with Philly the whole season, right? I mean, that's kind of this. We saw the same thing with the Saints this year. Right. The Saints stayed at 2 or 3 in the NFC the whole season. Vikings were ahead of them, and everybody said, well, the Saints are a different team now. Well, the Vikings beat them week 1. So there's always that discussion there, and we found out in the end that, those teams are very similar. But again, it's one of those things where that game will set the tone, because if there's that expectation that, okay, we're not Philly yet, we can't beat them. Right. Then I think that sets a ceiling on what the Vikings can accomplish. So I think it's important in that week 1 game to set the tone that, we can compete with this Eagles team.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, you look at this situation for the Eagles and for the Vikings, where, yes, it is only 1 week, but you also have to take into account what Drew just said, that it's kind of a tone setter game where, if the Vikings go in and get whomped by the Eagles, it's not a good look. And it's not a good look for anyone. It's not a good look for fans. Fans are going to be freaking the hell out immediately. Like, don't tell me now that you're just going to be a different type of fan by the time we get to the regular season next year. Like, don't tell me that, because I don't care how you act as a fan, but just don't lie to my frickin' face. Like, it's one thing to say to me, yeah, I'm a good Vikings fan, and it's another thing to act like a good Vikings fan. And a good Vikings fan, in my opinion, is someone who kind of rides the waves. It's a 16-game season. Every game matters. We all know that. Like, it's okay to be, quote, sad, or whatever word you want to associate with your feelings after a Vikings loss, depending on how connected you are to this football team. But as I understand it, the Vikings fans are very connected. Like, Minnesotans in general are very connected to their sports teams. We've seen kind of the rise and fall with optimism as the team, played well last season. 13-3 did a lot for this community. I'm living here. Like, I see it. And, making it to the NFC Championship game did a lot for this community. And it did a lot for the players on this team. I mean, did you guys see the deals that Case Keenum got, that Sam Bradford got, that Teddy Bridgewater got? Like, even the guys that aren't going to be a part of the Minnesota Vikings next year are still reaping the benefits of winning. Winning matters. So, yes, this first week against the Philadelphia Eagles really matters. And it matters right now. I mean, what is it? It's March 22nd. We're 5 months away from that game even happening, and I guarantee you there are Vikings players that are already thinking about that matchup, because it's already been announced. It's been announced. Why, and why wouldn't they? I mean, think of it like this. If I'm going to use a very simple analysis that works for me a lot. When I burn a pizza, my first When I burn a pizza, I
can relate to this.
Yeah, okay. When I burn a pizza, my first thought is, oh my God, you did it again, Beach. Right? You burnt the damn pizza again. And that's kind of how I connect, to this Eagles game. It's like the Vikings burned the pizza against the Eagles in that game, right? But what makes it kind of fun, I suppose, is that you don't have to burn it the next time. And so for me, like, when I go to cook my next pizza, I don't burn it the next time, or I do. Sometimes you do.
I love this analogy so much.
It's the perfection model. Like, you strive to be perfect at whatever you're trying to do, but let's just be real here. We're humans. We make mistakes. Yeah. Everyone does them. Everyone does things that they're not proud of.
Pizza isn't always a perfect golden brown.
You're damn right it's not. And I eat it, but the point is that we still eat it anyways, right? We still eat pizza anyways, and that is what makes making pizza great, and that's what makes football great. So that's about all I got to say on the Philly.
Yeah, that's a perfect way to end our, normal show agenda, is with some pizza. I would get into some questions now, but I think pizza is a great way to end it.
Let's do it.
Let's see here. We have so the ATL Twitter is kind of filled with Packers fans arguing because
I love it.
I tweeted something from it the other day about Harrison Smith's top plays, and half of them are against Packers, and that started some things.
People
But
are
anyway,
already pissed about that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Let's see. Mr. Mason at @IKeepIt_so_real asked us.
Real.
He asked us, which position group would you most like to see the team draft in the first round? He says offensive line, defensive line, cornerback. I kind of mentioned offensive line earlier. You were talking about Compton. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I would argue guard. There are a lot of good names out there. Quentin Nelson, probably the most famous of the group. It is my understanding at this point that you probably have to trade up to get Quentin Nelson, though. It's not going to be a situation where you can just get him like at 30. I am probably more of a proponent of trading back and getting more and accumulating more lottery tickets, as I like to say.
Sure. So I really like because it sounds like Billy Price's stock is falling because of that injury. I really like that chemistry he'd have with Elfline in the middle there.
Yes.
That'd be a good move. I think that's what I would do at this point. At this stage, anyway, we don't know. Price's stock may rise. That's actually kind of funny how his name is Price and we're talking about stock. But anyway, Price's stock may rise.
That was really good. That was really, really good.
Price's stock will rise. But
economy.
That's what I would do.
Sorry.
Yeah, a bunch of guys on a football podcast, talking about the economy. Next one here from @German_skull_fan. Says, what do you think about the Vikings roster moves during offseason? It seems like everything is focused on winning the Super Bowl next season. I like that, but what about the sustainability? So how do you feel about that? Because my skull scale, my latest one basically said or touched on the fact that it seems like the front office is pretty all in on 2018, given that the one-year deal for Richardson, going after Kirk Cousins as aggressively as they did, seems to me like the Vikings really want to get 2018 or want to get their first Super Bowl in 2018.
Well, I'm gonna bring it back a little bit because I remember seeing that Ziggy Wilf and I believe Mark Wilf as well were quoted in ESPN. Sorry, my phone's going off right now. Both of them were quoted on ESPN stating that that the Vikings are trying to win the Super Bowl now, like that the Super Bowl is coming. So that quote from, I believe Ziggy Wilf had like the graphic was the picture of him on that. That kind of told me that the Vikings were all in immediately. That's kind of the sense that I got, right? And that's the way I feel moving forward for this Vikings team, is that they're trying to win now. Yeah. Now, will they win now? I don't know, but that seems to be the goal, and it's a reflection of the Kirk Cousins contract. You get 3 years guaranteed. It makes the Vikings sustainable for at least 3 years. They might have to blow a few things up in 3 years, depending on how, the fact of the matter here is that they release certain information about salary cap, but there's a lot of things that we just don't see, right? Rob Brzezinski probably has a bunch of like escalators and different types of things inside a lot of these contracts that makes it more sustainable. I personally believe that Rob Brzezinski is arguably the very best cap guy in the league. Now, I understand that people think of me as, oh, he's a Vikings fan, whatever. How he just thinks that because he's a Vikings fan. No, I think that because Rob Brzezinski has consistently kept the Vikings out of salary cap.
Look at Adam Thielen's contract. It's almost insulting to Adam Thielen.
It really is.
It is. Considering Mike Evans just got $13 million a year or something like that, and it's Thielen's getting $4 million this year, and it's pretty, Anyway,
that's where I'm at with that whole situation. I think that yes, they are definitely playing to win a Super Bowl next year, but then again, which team isn't?
That's also true. Yeah. The next question from Joshua @Norseman Josh. With the release of Jarius Wright, who do you objectively see as the wide receiver 3 going into the offseason? And who do you think will be the wide receiver 3 by the time next year rolls around?
Okay, so we can establish already that Diggs and Thielen are locked in as 1 and 2, right? I don't even need to preface that at all? Good, okay. So then that comes down to what we got here. We got Laquan Treadwell. We got Caleb Jones. Michael Floyd is not under contract at all right now. I don't have a clue what he's going to be doing next year, despite the fact that he does have St. Paul ties, but I don't know what Michael Floyd's doing next. I would say that Treadwell probably slots in as the wide receiver 3 right now. I think that makes the most sense. Now, a lot can change between now and then. Maybe you have to draft a receiver. It depends on what the Vikings decide to do. If the Vikings want to bring back Michael Floyd, I'm sure that he's probably open to it, being that he has stated on countless different occasions that he enjoyed his time in Minnesota, and I'm sure that he would like to be back. Now, will he be back? We don't know. So I would say Treadwell or Floyd are probably the top candidates to be that wide receiver 3, but again, Treadwell probably has the inside track right now because he is under contract with the team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Treadwell is definitely the favorite, and I think it's one of those where right now, this is kind of his do or die situation for him. It's going to be his third year in the league. He's got the inside track to this third receiver spot. If he doesn't end up getting it, and then someone like Stacey Coley or Caleb Jones or
Stacey Coley too, yeah,
one of these other guys climbs up and grabs that spot. There's going to be some serious question marks about his future. I mean, this is his time, first round pick. You got to make you got to make a name for yourself now. So I think he's going to be given the inside track and kind of the going to be the favorite for it. I guess the next question I have then is who's going to be the first down getter on third down? Like who's going to be that slot guy that can move the chains? Get 9 yards on 3rd and 7. Because Jarius Wright has been that guy for done that so well in his career. Is Stephon Diggs going to step in the slot? Is Thielen going to step in the slot?
Here's the thing, though.
Last year, because Treadwell is not a big slot guy from what I understand.
So that begs the question then: who is going to be? I'll ask you this then. That kind of going off of that, who's the slot? Which of those 3 guys out of Treadwell, Thielen, and Diggs is most likely to be the slot guy?
See, it was Thielen last year, and I thought he was very good in the slot, and I think that would be my pick. But I think they have to adjust the scheme a little bit. And again, this was a new offense in, by the way.
Right.
John DeFilippo.
That's a good point too.
I guess what we could do, I haven't done this, or I haven't done it enough, but you just look at Philadelphia's offense, and you look at, I believe Nelson Aguilar was kind of their slot guy for the most part. So you kind of look at what his skill set is compared. I would compare it mostly towards Diggs, and he's been in the slot, but that's just one thing to consider.
So the way that Philadelphia did it, from what I understand, is that Torrey Smith was their vertical guy, right? And he was always on the outside playing that X spot, as people like to see. I consider X and Y to be the 2 outside spots, right? That's just how I do it in my head. I know that they're, just for the record, teams do this completely differently across the board. It depends on which coach. I just use XYZ because that's what makes the most sense for me personally, and it's easiest for me to explain things that way. So Torrey Smith was their X, the guy that was basically going vertical. That's his best thing. He's always been kind of a boom or bust type player. If you play fantasy football, you know what Torrey Smith is. He's a guy that's going to maybe get 2 catches 1 week for 75 yards.
He and Deshaun Jackson are the same.
Yeah, they're the same type of player, right? Then you've got Nelson Aguilar, and then you've also got Zach Ertz. Those are the 3 guys that kind of were doing a lot of damage. Too. And, of course, you got Alshon Jeffrey, right? So Alshon Jeffrey is your Z, I suppose, depending on how you look at it. So if you go X and Y are the 2 on the outside, you probably, say Torrey Smith is your X, Alshon Jeffrey is your Y. Nelson Aguilar is probably your Z, but some of those guys are interchangeable. You see both, when they run in 2 wide receiver sets, you can see that Aguilar would slide outside sometimes. So basically what it comes down to is if you put it like that, Treadwell looks the most like Alshon Jeffrey. And there are going to be people that hear that soundbite, and I'm going to hate it so much because they're going to say, well, they're not like each other at all. Jeffrey's way better than Treadwell. It's like, I know. I get it. Like, I understand that. But I'm making physical comparisons here. So Treadwell and Jeffrey are very similar. Diggs and Aguilar are very similar. And then Thielen and Torrey Smith, I guess. The difference here is that I think that Thielen and Diggs can do it all. And Treadwell has proven...
Diggs and Thielen are much more versatile than Philly's receivers were last year. So that probably opens a few more doors for DeFilippo to kind of get creative.
And have his fun with that, yeah.
Right.
So ultimately what it comes down to, as always, we don't know. I mean, there's a lot of fun to be had here with regard to, which way you want to move these receivers around. But what it comes down to in the end is that we don't really know. It just makes the most sense to me for Thielen to continue being in the slot, as Drew said.
Right. We have kind of a few more here. We'll kind of try to go through them rather quickly here. From Stephen A. Smith at StevePa27. Do you see a potential replacement for Kyle Rudolph in this tight end class? Still a fan of Rudy, but replacing him for the 2019 season would free up money and you to sign our pending free agents. I have a guy that I can think of, but do you have anybody in mind?
No, this is your question. You get to talk. Go do your thing.
Okay. I know Ben Anderson too also asked about a question. that mentioned Dallas Goedert, but the South Dakota State guy, I believe he's the number one tight end almost across the board for people to rank. But this guy could be the next Rob Gronkowski, and I'm not just saying that because of his South Dakota State, playing
I think
career.
You are. I think that's why you're saying it.
Hey,
that's what I think.
Go watch his tape then. Go into the draft breakdown and check this out.
I agree.
He has, I think he's 6'6", 6'7", big hulking frame. He's super athletic. And he can block too. That's a rare combination. That's the combination Gronk had that nobody really has had in the NFL at that position. So Goddard can be a freak, and I think that I would not be upset with that pick at number 30 overall. It's kind of where the range is that which he's mocked at right now.
Is he being mocked in the first round range already?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Wow.
Goddard, low first round.
I don't hate it. I mean,
and again, you look at the tight ends the Vikings have. You got David Morgan and Kyle Rudolph, like that's a pretty solid duo right there. It's just you worry about Rudolph and his health, how long he's going to be able to sustain. He's nicked up a little bit past few years. He's been very productive. I'm not going to take away Rudolph's production from him, but you just never know what a weapon like Goddard can do, because it could also hide that third receiver weakness if the Vikings have one. You can have, instead of Treadwell out there in three receiver sets, you could have Thielen, Diggs, Goddard, and Rudolph, for example.
Did Trey Burton sign somewhere?
He did. I believe it was Chicago.
He signed with Chicago? Oh, my God. So Chicago's, by the way, just to throw it out there, if in fact Burton did sign with Chicago, I'm going to take your word for it, Drew. That means they also have...
Now I have to double check.
Well, they got Allen Robinson now, too. So, I mean...
I've heard some lies on the show.
If you're a Bears fan, as I know a couple of the people that listen to this show are...
it was Chicago.
Yeah, so it sounds like Chicago's doing a really nice job as well. My only take is that Goddard's very good from what I see on film. I'm not gonna dispute anything that Drew just said. I've only seen good things from Dallas Goedert, so that's my impression that I've got from him. We can kind of move on from there. Do we have any final questions here to wrap up the show?
We can do. We have a few here. We'll do this one, and then we'll save. So Kyle and Adam West, we'll save yours for next time. We'll get this one from Luke. He says, "How do you feel about the skull chant after it received national media attention?"
Still love it.
I still love it.
But okay, let me tell you my narrative of the skull chant. So the first time I saw the skull chant was actually the opening game at US Bank Stadium.
That's the Packers game?
Yeah, the Packers game. So I was there with one of my buddies who is a Packers fan, right?
Oh,
he was wearing a Rodgers jersey, and I was sitting there in my Diggs jersey, and it was to me, I thought it was stupid at first. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I thought it was really dumb because I was like, okay, it's just a bunch of people like.
I mean, it's a little corny. Like
it is. It's like doing the Macarena, right? It's like da na 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 na.
I mean, we could admit to that. Like, it's a little corny, but like when you get that many people doing it, and how powerful it became. Because for those who don't know, I was a high school basketball coach this past season for St. John's Prep School, right by on the St. John's campus here. So we went to a game at Osakis High School, which is probably 45 minutes away, and this was the week before the NFC Championship game, I believe, and they stopped the pregame rituals so everybody could do the skull chant, and the band would do the drums, and then we'd all do it. And it's like, that was for me kind of captivating, because it's like, this is just a football team, right? Like, this is just a football team that happens to have its home games in Minnesota, and we're stopping the pregame rituals for a high school basketball game to do this for 2 minutes. Like,
right.
That's how powerful it became. So it's a lot more than just a skull chant. Like, it might be corny. Like, I'll admit to it being a little bit corny, but like, it became so powerful that
when we were at Blackstack during the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
I mean, we got Drew and I did like a halftime show, I suppose, where we just kind of talked about the team and what was going down, and kind of tried to amp up the crowd for the second half, which of course did not go all that
was very. You did a good job, though.
I tried.
It was 24/7 at half, and it was just looking so ugly, and we got those people up on their feet.
Exactly, and that's kind of the thing here. That's my feeling on the skull chant is kind of a reflection of what I saw that day, and that was that just by kind of. Through positive energy, kind of gave Vikings fans more of an opportunity to have a good time and celebrate their team. So I am a fan of the skull chant, and there's I love the camaraderie that comes with it as opposed to the actual action itself. I do think it's a little corny. I'm with Drew on that, but I think that it's a lot of fun, and I think what trend isn't corny to some people? I mean, Packers fans are going to always say
it's better than
that
Go
it's
Pack
stupid.
Go. I think that's all we need to be said, or that needs to be said right here, right?
Right.
Skull Chant is better than Go Pack Go.
And that's a perfect way to round out the show. Skull Chant is better than Go Pack Go. I'm not going to deny it. Just an objective take by me. All right, then. So that's the end of the show for the day, folks. Thanks, as always, for listening. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, CastBox, YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that like and that subscribe button. That helps us out. You can find myself on Twitter at Robert Reidell, Reidell. You can find Drew on Twitter at Drew Mahowald, Mahowald. And then you can find the normal Twitter account for the Vikings ATL Pod at Vikings ATL Pod. That's about the labor, folks. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you guys later next week.